Okay, so we're going to start right on time right now. Everyone, welcome. Hello and welcome to this breakout session, which is called I'm So Proud of You, Parent and Family Involvement in Higher Education During the COVID-19 Pandemic and Beyond. I am your moderator this morning. My name is Deborah Gorov, and I am the Conference and Event Coordinator with UNLV, and I go by she, hers, and hers. And as I said, I'll be moderating this session. So if you have any questions, please let me know. As a reminder, please remain muted and have your cameras turned off during the duration of the session. This will help us ensure that the audio and video quality of the meeting. This meeting, as you can see, is being recorded and will be sent to you along with presentation slides at the conclusion of today's event. I also turned on the transcription service if you need it. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat box on the right of your screen, and we will do our best to answer them during the allotted time at the end of the session. Please do not send questions or messages to Heather, as she will not see the chat function as she is sharing her screen. Please send them to everyone, or feel free to private chat me as well. At the end of the summit, please remember to fill out the post-event survey found in the summit website. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Heather Rappaport. She is a PhD student at UNLV's higher education program. Her research focuses on the parents and family members of college students, exploring how they can be a support network for first-generation students. She is originally from Pennsylvania. Heather holds a BA from American University in Washington, D.C., an MS in Hospitality and Tourism from Cal State, and an MA in Education from Pepperdine University. She serves as a development director for student affairs at UNLV and teaches in the first and second year seminar program. In her free time, which she has, I think, I'm not sure, she enjoys hiking, gardening, and chauffeuring her two amazing children. So Heather, take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Debbie, for that kind introduction. And I'm so happy to see so many folks joining us from today from all over Nevada. So thank you so much for being here. I certainly feel energized by that awesome address from Chancellor Rose this morning. It was just such a great way to start out the morning. So today's talk is about parent engagement in higher education during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. So we've all seen helicopters before, and you may have heard the term helicopter used to describe some parents. These parents are known for hovering and swooping in to help their children. But what if we looked from a different perspective at these parents who are highly invested and advocate for their students? I just love these pictures. I have so many throughout this presentation to share with you. In a typical year, families will experience milestones together, like family reunions and holidays and graduation ceremonies. And I want to mention, before we get into the data of this study, that I use parent as a very inclusive term. It might be any family member or guardian, grandma, uncle, older sister, anyone who serves that role for students. This year was very different because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Happy moments were replaced with hand washing instructions, mask wearing, and statewide lockdowns. Families were left feeling sad and isolated. But in the midst of the pandemic, education marched on. Although there were stories in the media about rocky transitions to virtual learning, students finished high school and did make decisions about college. Staff like yourselves on college campuses across the country worked hard to provide safe opportunities for new students to get accustomed to the college life. We welcome parents as much as possible into the process. One activity that UNLV offered to parents and family members was to write letters to their students. Typically, these letters are written in person during orientation. But because of the pandemic, we created a website with the stationery for parents to type their letters and submit them electronically. I decided that these letters would be fascinating to study because the research hasn't been done before. I examined the letters for ideas and sentiments that the parents expressed to their college students. So let me explain the context of this study. Yuri Brafenbrenner, an educational psychologist, studied human development. He found that when parents and schools interact, they form a strong unit called a mesosystem, and that's what helps students succeed. Usually this framework is applied to K through 12 education, but I wanted to extend it to college students and their parents. My research also incorporates Arnett's model of emerging adulthood. This is a distinct life period between the ages of 18 and 25 years where the student is no longer an adolescent, but not yet fully an adult. It's characterized by explorations of identity and personal freedom, where the students work toward becoming individuals who are self-regulating and self-governing. This parent-student relationship can develop a sense of mutual respect, characterized by affection and attachment based on their shared experiences. We also looked at collectivism. The collectivist culture emphasizes group needs over the individual. Relationships and interconnectedness play a central role in people's identities, and families share many milestones together. This is quite a different perspective from some of the early studies of college students in the 1960s that were based on autonomous perspectives. The idea of breaking from the family is not embraced in all cultures, and this is very important for us to consider in student affairs when we're making program decisions about how to support our students and their families. The transition from high school to college can be very challenging. To test my idea about parent support for college students, I looked at 105 letters, finding patterns in the textual data. And I'd like to read one of these letters to you with permission from the writer. Even though I'm not your biological father, I still see you as my daughter. Since the very first time we met, I knew you were special. Your drive, your love, and your compassion for others is what makes you special. I'm so proud of you, and I look forward to watching you grow into the most successful woman you can ever be. It's time for you to take over the world, change the world for the better. I am here for you whenever you need me. Love you very much. Just amazing. I'll tell you that I sat in my kitchen and just cried as I read these letters. I certainly had to work hard to keep an emotional distance. Not surprisingly, I found that parents are in disbelief about how fast their students grew up. They gave advice about the present situation, like wash your hands and keep your room sanitized. And they looked forward to the future with statements like, I can't wait to watch you graduate from college. You will be the first in our family. What was unique about this year's study was how reflective parents were about the pandemic, even as we were in the midst of it. A parent wrote, one day you will look back and have the story to tell of what happened to you in 2020. And the end of that story will be how you fought through and ended up stronger. Another wrote, you have handled this crazy year with so much maturity and grace. And when we did a frequency test of the words, proud was most mentioned with 151 occurrences. Here's how our stationery looked. Like I said, when we did this activity in person, we handed out the papers and collected them on the spot in orientation. We offer 17 sessions typically throughout the summer. So in an average year, we would end up with about 1,000 letters. Some parents wrote more than one. Some took extra stationery to give to grandma to write one, and then we got it in the mail later. Some families brought little brothers and sisters along, so they drew pictures on their letters, which was just adorable. And then when we did this activity online, it was a fillable PDF on our website. So parents absolutely did have the option if they wanted to just email or mail us a letter because that was easier for them if they didn't have access to a computer. We accepted the letters that way and we scanned them in so that they would still get to the students. And the picture on the right is from 2 years ago when the students picked up their letters in person during the third week of school. So they write their letters in the summertime, we collect them. Everybody kind of forgets about it. And then in the third week of school, when that reality of how challenging the semester might be kind of hits home and students start to feel a little bit homesick too if they're living away from home, that's when we passed out the letters. And although passing them out in person does take a lot of time, we just loved having that touch point with students. And it was an opportunity for us to ask them how they were doing and to refer them to student services on campus if it seemed like they were struggling. So looking to the future, instead of thinking about parents as intrusive, this research demonstrates the triad relationship that can be formed between the schools, the parents, and college students to support academic success. When you think about different ways that you might support your students, this is particularly important. Many of our students come from collectivist cultures, and of course, for many, they are the first in their family to attend college. So the entire family is learning along the way. We believe that colleges can create welcoming pathways for engagement so that parents have the opportunity to be supportive spectators, feeling welcomed and valued in the process. I just love that term, supportive spectator. High impact practices like the letter writing activity will also help build affinity to your university. And this mesosystem of encouragement was very critical during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it can be carried forward into post-pandemic practices. Here are some of the pathways for engagement that we suggest that you might try at your institution or you might already have in place. Creating a parent and family website, collecting parent and family information on your applications, inviting families to opt in to receive communications. So on our parent and family page, we just have a big red button that they can click and they fill out a form. Because oftentimes, as you know, we have the student information, but we don't necessarily have the family's information. So giving them this option to opt in makes it much easier to collect the data and to compile it. We do write a monthly e-newsletter, and I'm going to share some of the stats from that. We do host a parent and family orientation, like I discussed, and similar to many schools, they may arrive together, but we have two separate tracks. So the students go off on their own and do their thing, and then the parents come to a different group of staff, and we provide the orientation for them throughout the day. And then at the end, they come back together. You might consider hosting your own letters from home activity. And then, of course, having a family day or a family weekend. This year, ours will be in conjunction with homecoming in October. So families will be invited to a lot of the homecoming festivities. And we also have a jazz brunch in our dining commons, which is a great way for families to come and experience the dining hall together. Whether they have a commuter student or a residential student, everyone is invited. And we just sell tickets to the event to cover the cost of the food. So here's some of our program data. We're in our third year. We're just close to 10,000 active families. You know, every year some seniors will graduate and their parents will opt out, and then new families will come in. We have 2,500 in our Facebook group. And as time moves on, it's really terrific to see the parents who have some experience going through the process offering advice to some of the incoming families. We have a 60% open rate on our emails, which we're super excited about, that people remain so engaged. We've had over 21,000 website hits. So we have a blog that we write articles for, short articles, and that's where we also post messages from the president and provost and our vice president for student affairs. And for our very first family day, kind of reimagined, we had 750 people attend from 7 states outside of Nevada. So we were really happy with the results. And like I mentioned, we're going to have an all Rebel weekend combined with homecoming this fall. Fingers crossed, as long as everything continues to improve with the pandemic. So now we look ahead with hope and optimism to a time when families can be welcomed back to campus. So I want to leave you with a sentiment that captures what many parents express to their college students. And this is a quote from the letters. "We want you to know how extremely proud we are of you for taking the next step into adulthood. We are here to support you in any way that you can." And on this side, on the left, this is a photo from Family Day in 2019. But on the right, this is a collage. I asked the families to just send in some pictures of themselves with their students. So we had hundreds of photos that got sent in. So I just made a fun collage of a few that came in. So I'd love to answer any questions that you might have. And actually, I do have a second screen so I can see the chat if you wanted to type those in. And I would also love to hear what you're doing at your institution to include families, or if you think there are any barriers that you might have to setting up this sort of program, it would be great to talk about those as well. So anything that you'd like to share, we are listening.
Feel free to, if you feel comfortable, you could start your video. And if you want to jump in, you can do that too, or you just put a chat and ask questions as well.
Hey Heather, we actually we actually just did a presentation on adult and non-traditional learners. So I have a question for you. When you do encounter an adult or non-traditional learner instead, right? Maybe it's the mom coming to school instead of the kiddo coming on things like Family Day. Is there a way that you incorporate like their families, and how do you do that?
Absolutely, yes. So this is very common that we have non-traditional students who are enrolled. So everyone is welcome, and we make sure that on our messaging, on our flyers, we explain that, and also in any written communications. And then we typically set up activities for those children as well. So we had all kinds of lawn games available, and the brunch itself, was open to everyone. So we did have, families of 12 that came, and you couldn't tell who was the student. There were so many folks that came along. So yes, absolutely, it's very inclusive. And I saw someone asked about Spanish. So yes, we do translate the communications in Spanish, and there are programs that are offered in Spanish, particularly by our Academic Success Center. They do offer programs in Spanish. I would say they aren't attended. If you were looking at sheer numbers, right, the attendance numbers are not as high, but that's not the important part in measuring success, right? Because to those folks that are there, this is absolutely the most important thing. And once we started sending out communication in Spanish, it caught on very quickly by word of mouth that information and staff resources were available in Spanish. So I hope that answers both Amber and Gabriella's questions.
Definitely. Thank you so much for answering that, because I was like, oh, I wonder how they do that. How do they incorporate? So that's super helpful, Heather. And I think my only other question for you is, what department does that for you guys at UNLV? Who organizes all of these amazing things? I'd love to know.
Thank you. So back in the day, I would say when there was the first incarnation of this, there was a parent and family program office that ran under the student affairs umbrella. And there were staff members, and then the recession came along and everything had to sort of be reimagined. So it moved over to the orientation office, which in our case is under admission. So it's like a first year programs kind of concept. For now, obviously, I'm the development officer, right? So we just all juggle all these hats. But what I am doing is not based in fundraising, it's based in building connections with families, grounded in research. So I'm never asking anybody for money as part of this program. So I would characterize this as other duties as assigned. But I think in the long run, when life gets better, our hope is to relaunch the family office that we had pre-recession.
Okay, awesome. That's super helpful. I love it. Other dues as it's our 10%. Got it. Perfect.
Yeah. And so that's why I would say my programs are cost effective. You know, they're based on if you would like a ticket to brunch, you can buy it. Or if you'd like a ticket to the football game, you can buy it. I think down the road, we hope that we can offer some things that are included as part of the overall program.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Are there any other questions or maybe even barriers to success that you might want to talk about that you can imagine at your institutions?
Heather,
Like I
I'm
said, I
actually
teach
gonna
first and second year seminar, so I'm used to wait time where everybody needs like
Heather,
10 seconds.
I have a question for you. I did notice that whether it was like when you started this program or last year specifically, you were asking for donations for supplies, like to put together snack bags and so forth. And could you talk a little bit about how that came to fruition and how successful it was?
Oh, sure. Thanks for bringing that up. Yes. So during the pandemic, when we went into that emergency online period, we had roughly 200 students that needed to stay in the residence halls for one reason or another. So we never technically closed all of the residence halls. We just sort of spread folks out for safety reasons when we weren't sure what the story was with the pandemic. So those students, even though we did have meal service on campus as a takeout option, we wanted to provide them with groceries and basic toiletries. So what we did was we made an Amazon wish list, which is such an amazing tool. And we put in basically things that we could get up to a quantity of 200. So it might have been snacks or canned foods or crackers and cookies and Gatorade. We absolutely put ramen noodles on there and microwavable meals that had a pretty good shelf life. And so we put that out to the family network, and the response was just overwhelmingly awesome because a family could go in and, you know, for $20 or less, buy something to help support the students. We coordinated with housing, so all the shipments from Amazon went to the housing office. And then we went in and we made up bags for each of the students. And we gave them the option. They could either pick it up during mealtime or they could come to the office later and pick up the bags. So it was just a nice opportunity to reach out to students and let the families feel like they were doing something in support. And then the colleges, UNLV is divided into different colleges. So they wrote letters that we tucked into the bag. So just letters of support, letting the students know that we were still here to help them and support them. Thanks for asking, Debbie. That feels like so long ago.
Any other questions, or does anyone want to share what maybe their institution does?
Yeah, that'd be great to hear if there's anybody who wants to share. Yeah, Sydney.
Just a thought, and I'm thinking about from the community college level, it might be fun, and I'm thinking along with Amber, I work with a lot of the non-traditional students who may not have parents, or they may have kids, but those kids might be too little. But we do have a lot of agencies who pay for training, and it could even be good that if they are being supported by agency staff, that staff could write notes or letters or that kind of thing. So everybody needs a cheering section. So that could be, it's just a thought, just kind of came to me. So.
Oh, I love it. That's a great brainstorm, Sydney. Thank you. Yeah, if you work with any community organizations who might be willing to write letters of support, that's terrific. I'll share with you that we do have a Hope Scholars program. So these are students who were identified, who self-identified as homeless during their K through 12 experience. And so when they come to UNLV, we have a lot of wraparound support services for them, but they don't have family members that would be able to write them a letter. And as you said, we want everyone to be included. So we teamed up with some of our donors to the program, as well as some community support organizations, and they write the letters to the students, and then we include them. So it's been a great way to make sure that those students do get something.
I love that. I love that. This is a great presentation. Thank you so much, Heather.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, you can see why I sit in my kitchen and just cry, right? While I read these letters. It's hard to keep a distance from the data. And I just love that it doesn't really cost that much. If you wanted to just print some stationery, great, but really you could just use printer paper if you wanted to, right? And hand it out to folks and encourage them to sit and write a letter. I think when we started the program, we didn't anticipate the volume of letters that we would get and the amount of time and reflection that family members would put into the letters. So we pass them out at the stationery out at lunchtime. Some write very quickly and want to be done with it, and others will say, "Can I give this back to you at the end of the day?" So at our orientation, I sit at a table at the end of the day and just collect the letters from families when they've had time to write it. And then we provide our mailing address if they would prefer to mail it back as well. Thanks, Amber and Carolyn. Thank you.
I guess I'm the one with questions today, but no, thank you for sharing, everyone. Heather, I have another question for you. So you said that during normal non-COVID times, you would go to the orientations and you would do separate sessions with the parents so that the students can go on and do their own thing. So you could kind of separate those helicopter type of parents, right? How did that work in a virtual orientation level for you?
Okay, great question. So we set up separate times for the parents and family members to participate in orientation. So just like these breakout sessions, they would sign on at a different time than their students, knowing that, there may just be one computer or one mobile device that the whole family needs to access. So we typically do these on a Saturday morning or afternoon or a weeknight, knowing that parents have varying work schedules. So we used WebEx events, and there were usually 4 or 5 of us that gave different presentations. And then our favorite part was we have a student panel. So some of our orientation leaders would sign on and they would answer questions that the parents might have. And that is just the best part because they ask everything under the sun. How much laundry detergent should we bring to college? Where does my student park? What if they can't find their class? All those anxiety questions that you can imagine are floating around in the parents' heads. We try to put them at ease. And in that case, I would say there are 17 sessions. So other duties as assigned, we just kind of clear our schedule between May and August on Saturdays and weeknights, just to make sure that we have enough staff on hand to help the parents. And we do have a lot of families at UNLV who come from Hawaii, as well as the East Coast. So we have to be very aware of the time difference so they're not signing on too early or too late. So we kind of vary the times to make sure that everybody can find some time to attend. And then we also recorded the sessions and had a transcript, so that way anybody who couldn't come in person had the opportunity to watch the session. Are there any other questions or even ideas you might have, or barriers that you might see to success at your institutions? We might be done early, Deb.
We might be done early, so that's okay. That's okay. It gives time people to have a little break. I'm going to put in the chat here. I'm going to thank you for joining, and I'm reminding you to go back to the Summit website, and I put the link in there to live stream the keynote beginning at 11:30. If there's no more questions or anything, then we thank you for attending. We hope that you got a lot out of it. You have Heather's information. If you need to contact her directly, we really appreciate you joining us today. And when Summer has something to say. Okay.
Sorry, I've been listening, and it was hard for me to unclick my mute as fast as I wanted to. So I just wanted to say for the other institutions out there, so I work with Heather closely. I work in student affairs, finance, and administration. So when we're talking about barriers to developing a program like this, I'll just be the first to say Heather basically does this on a shoestring budget. So don't have in your mind that not having the money to put on a program like this is I know that, times are tough with the budget, but she really does it on very, very little fiscal support. So a lot of it is her labor. And so just wanted to put that out there that you really can do it on a shoestring budget. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Summer, for saying that. And you're right, like there's so many partners across campus that I pick up the phone and call, and I'm like, could you please help me figure this out? Or Summer, is there some way we could do this? So yeah, I think folks run the other way sometimes when they see me coming, but it's all in the name of the students, right? Like that's why we're doing this, to help the students succeed academically.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Heather. I did put in there the link to go to the keynote that starts at 11:30. And also wanted to remind you that we do have a session survey. So we appreciate you filling that out so that we get some feedback from you. And if that is all, then I am going to stop the recording, and I appreciate you attending this morning, and I hope you're having a good morning. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.